Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with Marvel Universe. From the comics, TV, and movies, we will go from the Orgo Corp to Counter Earth to nowhere in order to bring the Marvel Universe right to you. I'm your friendly neighborhood Brent.
I'm the nerd with the mouth, David.
Alliance Assemble.
Assemble.
Yes, David is here making your return to the Marvel Alliance. I don't remember what the number was of the last time you were on, but welcome back to the show.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think last time I was on, Miss Marvel was still on.
That has been a while. That was last summer, I think. I don't know. That's definitely been a while. Yeah, Chris he's off on assignment. He's vacationing, and for some reason his wife didn't want him to go see a movie and record on their very, very limited vacation without the kids with them. So we'll let him off the hook this time. But don't worry, he will be back next week, and we will definitely get all of his thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Before we get into it, let's go ahead and get the plugs out of the way. Do remember we have 8 shows covering a wide range of geek and nerdom. To see the full schedule, check out the show notes below and subscribe to the Geek Ultimate Alliance on Twitter at GUA Pod Network so you know when all the shows drop. And of course, over on Patreon, everybody in the network is doing stuff. Here on Marvel Alliance, we're doing We Can Watch This All Day, the chronological rewatch. And episode 16, Black Widow has dropped recently. And got to say, I really think that one fits in nicely when you watch it chronologically versus the way it actually came out.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you would take just a minute and rate and review the podcast feeds, either the GUA podcast feed, the Marvel Alliance feed, we'd really appreciate it. And I want to be sure to mention our official sponsor, Organic Price Books. With them, you've got a... Oh, sorry about that. A little technical difficulties there getting that to show. With Organic Price Books, they are, again, our official sponsor. They do sell graphic novels, omnibus, and collected editions at great discounts. You can earn rewards on every purchase that will earn you discounts on your next orders. They do ship to the U.S. and internationally in secure packaging. To ensure that your books arrive undamaged, go to organicpricebooks.com and use the promo code MarvelGUA to get $2 off on every order. Again, Marvel GUA is the coupon code you want to put in. Save $2 on every single order. Our thanks to Organic Priced Books. David, before we get started, I think we should take a moment. I know Chris wanted us to take a moment because he definitely agrees with this, to basically express the support of Marvel Alliance and the GUA as a whole for the Writers Guild of America. They are on strike right now. I'm sure you remember what happened last time they had to go on strike.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, not great for the TV viewing and the movie viewing around that time, 2007, I want to say. But you know what? My understanding is it's important because they're just not getting paid the way they should, especially with the rise of streaming. And they do need help. But I want to also point out what I saw listener Jim Scroggs tweet when he said, quote, "I really hope the other parts of TV shows like camera operators, makeup artists, props, and other technical positions are being taken care of during the WGA strike." Yes, of course, all of those people we hope are hope for the best right now. And I feel for all of them, but I'm seeing all these comments and stuff go like, this Marvel thing's going to be delayed, that Marvel thing's going to be delayed, this project's delayed, this thing is using AI to write stuff. I'm like, you know what? Just pay the people. Just pay the people.
Definitely agree. Last time it happened, I remember fan favorite shows of mine like Heroes getting cut short and things like that. And I'm at the point now where I want the people who are working to make these things happen, because we love the actors. We love seeing the actors in these roles, but a lot of these actors would not be able to deliver such great dialogue if it was not for these writers, if it was not for everyone else behind the scenes. So we want to show them our support because they are a big part of what makes these great moments that we love happen.
Absolutely. And yeah, Heroes seems to be the one that everybody in the circles that I follow remembers, because that was really before the rise of real like comic book television, right? Like that was our comic book show that wasn't a comic book show. Save the cheerleader, save the world, of course. But we did just want to mention, the WGA, they deserve to be paid, and hopefully this strike will end sooner than later with them, getting what they absolutely deserve. All right.
Agreed.
With that out of the way, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, James Gunn back to complete his trilogy plus the holiday special, whatever you're going to call that. Gets to complete his trilogy. You know, it was touch and go there for a while. He got fired. He went over to DC. He comes back. He completes it. I'll tell you this movie just makes me more excited to see what he's going to do at DC. David, non-spoiler thoughts. What did you think about Volume 3?
I will say that it is after 3 viewings, yes, 3. It is
You did get a third viewing in. Well done, sir.
I snuck in a third. It stands above both other Guardians of the Galaxy movies and the special, in my opinion. Like, I didn't want to say that after the first time, but I could definitely say going back in, just I was wondering with all the rumors surrounding it, like how they would fit everything into this one movie. And I felt like everyone got a point to shine. And I mean, everyone on the team got a point to shine. And it was truly some of James Gunn's best work.
Absolutely. I think there's definitely something to be said for that. I was blown away by this movie. You know, we were both lucky enough, thanks to Chris for the tip on this, to get to go see an early screening last week of this movie. And because of that, I too have gotten 3 viewings in as well. My third one was about 11 hours ago is when it started, actually. So I ended up watching it twice in under 24 hours. Always fun when that works out. This movie, it's up there. Like, just, you know, I guess spoiler for where I'm going to rank it. I'm not flat out telling you just yet. I'm still mulling over the final position, but I know the tier. I know the area of where it's going to be in my rankings. And this movie was just incredible. It was a very satisfying and emotional send off to all of these characters that we've known and loved since 2014 when Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 came out.
Yeah.
It features one of my absolute favorite action sequences of the entire MCU. Just,
Oh, yeah.
Just absolutely stunning, absolutely incredible. And it features so many other great moments. Volume 1 has a scene of just the team talking. I call it the give a shit scene. It's just the team talking right before the third act battle. It's one of my favorite scenes of the entire MCU. This movie has another one that rivals that. And I'm not just talking the action scene. There's a non-action scene in this movie that rivals that first one from Guardians of the Galaxy. I tell you, nobody makes you care about the group of misfits that are coming together, the found family, more than James Gunn. He is the master at it, and he has proven that now, in my opinion, several times between Guardians of the Galaxy's Peacemaker and Suicide Squad. So I think we can go ahead and get into it unless you have any more to say. But I was extremely impressed.
My biggest thing that shocked me, but very much I loved about this is I love Dave Bautista, and I'm a huge wrestling fan, so I've liked Dave Bautista since before he transitioned into acting, and he gets a moment in this movie that is just a real Drax time to shine that I felt like was very deserved for the loyalty that he's given not only to the character but to James Gunn and this universe. That I felt like I was really glad that he got that time to shine.
Yes, well, I'm definitely with you on that one. Let's go ahead and take our first ad break, and then we'll go across the spoiler wall. So, again, listeners, these ads do help support the network, but they do come in a little loud. So I'm going to give you a 3 count so you can turn your volume down if you want. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. All right, and with that, we are back. David, let's just get into it. I think right where the movie starts. You know, we basically start off with a little bit of a flashback. We're going to have lots of flashbacks in this, but we have Baby Rocket and the other raccoons as a villain. We would learn it's the High Evolutionary, just goes and focuses on Rocket right out of the gate. And right away, I'm like, oh man, you're gonna make me feel sad about all these little animals, aren't you? Just out of the gate.
Yeah, they really established straight on that. Okay, Rocket is a focal point. You know, start thinking back to everything that you've dealt with Rocket in the past, and he is the major heartbeat of this movie, and they just come right out the gate and tell you that.
James Gunn has said that basically Rocket is the character he seems to see himself the most in. He, of course, he sees himself in all the characters that he writes, but the most he sees in Rocket Raccoon. And I feel like you could really show that, like, he got some real love in this movie. When it jumps back to the present day, we basically are kind of getting like a status quo update of what the Guardians are doing. If you saw the holiday special, you know that they're running nowhere now, and that is where they are. They call it Guardians HQ, And you've got Rocket wandering around listening to the song "Creep." Rocket has taken a liking to all the music that Peter has subjected him to over the years, and we get little, like that, like Groot's putting up a sign, and we Nebula's just kind of out there helping some people, and you end up finding Star-Lord. You see Peter, and he's just in a drunken stupor, right? Like he's fallen over, he's clumsy. He is not a good drunk, let's put it that way. And he's just yelling at Rocket for listening to his, I think he said his Zune, like it's the Zune that he had. He's just yelling at him for listening to that, and Rocket says for the first of 2 or 3 times in this movie, he's not actually a raccoon, because of course they just call him a raccoon. And actually, side note, they call him like a raccoon, a badger, a squirrel, a hedgehog, like all these different names in it. But
I think Gamora herself calls him like 4 different things.
Something like that, yeah. And so it's just I love the way that Rocket still clings to this "I'm not a raccoon" all the way through to the very end of the movie. But regardless, it's sad, right? Like, and you get it. Like, Peter is upset over Gamora, and I've seen some people kind of say, like, how does this track with what Peter was doing in Thor: Love and Thunder? My answer to that is simply, like, he was basically in denial. He was forcing it. He was hanging out with Party Thor at this point, right? And they weren't together that long. But by the time he goes back and they settle down, now he's stuck with his thoughts, and now they creep in, and he's missing Gamora because, of course, she's alive, but she's not. And it seems like it's like she's from 40. The one who's around is from 2014, so she's missed all kinds of years of actual development that our Gamora went through, and she doesn't have all these memories. And so, of course, Peter is he's just sad, and he just passes out. And the whole team is walking with Guardians logo above them. Drax had just said, "Oh, again." So now we know this has been happening several times. Got to feel bad for Peter at this point.
Yeah, and just given Peter's personality leading up to this moment, I got the feeling that once the other Gamora came, Peter was probably on a kick of, he was using the charm, and he was like, "Why isn't the charm working? It worked on you before." And Gamora's constantly saying, "I'm not your Gamora." So at this point, Peter's probably is in a drunken stupor because he tried so hard to use these same tactics on this person who is not the same person. She's left, he's alone, and he's finding his new love at the bottom of a bottle.
Back in Rocket's room or quarters or apartment or whatever you want to call it, he takes his shirt off, and we're reminded that he's got all these implants into his back and stuff. And we saw those in volume 1. I don't think we did see those in volume 2, but we're reminded about those right before Adam Warlock comes in. And I tell you, one side note, the way the flying and stuff was with that, I'm like, yes, please, Superman Legacy, James Gunn, bring it on. But Adam Warlock, I thought he looked great. I really liked the look. He's from the Sovereign. Him and Aisha are basically the only characters from the Sovereign that we see in this movie. But Adam comes in, just lays out Rocket right there. Rocket's done. Like, he's basically out. And he lays into the entire team. They attack him one by one, but it's organic. It's not like they're just like, you take turns. It's more like they're all spread throughout nowhere, and they're just trying to get to him.
Yeah, he was tossing them about, so he kept the battlefield pretty spread out, so it wasn't a chance for everyone to just gang tackle him. But I mean, he stood toe to toe with Nebula, toe to toe with Drax. He was putting in that work, and I felt bad for poor Mantis and her arm.
In the entire movie, Mantis's arm, and like, she fell down 2 or 3 times, and like, it just looked like her neck or back was going to break several times throughout. I mean, just kind of bug like, maybe that had some, I don't know, but yeah, not just her poor arm, but Drax took a huge beating from him. Groot basically got decapitated. He was down to just his head and a few little twigs he could use to walk around with. And Nebula, she got screwed up so bad, and she clearly can like put herself back together naturally, so it's not that big a deal, but it looks so painful.
Yeah, that wasn't the only time during this movie where she takes a beating, and it looks rough every single time. I'm glad that she can put herself back together. Unfortunately, it's because of torture she can do that, but I am glad that she can, because yeah, she took some hits that there's no way anyone else is coming back from that.
And she does mention later in the movie that she got some upgrades from Rocket, and so that kind of helps her a little bit. But she does finally get, well, Adam is beating down Drax. Nebula does get the drop on him, stabs him, hurts him, and he takes off running, like literally runs back to Mama is what he does there.
Yeah.
It's at this point that we learn that med packs, like in video games, are a thing in the Guardians of the Galaxy. We've never seen these before, but they seem to be able to heal anything, right? Like they put one on Mantis's arm, it's all broken and mangled, and it just snaps back into place. But they put one on Rocket and it didn't work. And I didn't. Did you know? Like, did you know about this secret code or anything like that? Had you seen anything on it?
I had not seen anything on that before, so that one even caught me off guard when they went to go use it and it didn't work, and it kind of looked like an AED, just the way that he was jumping back to life, trying to get his heart restarted
Yep.
with it. And but Nebula seemed to know, 'cause she instantly was like, "Nope, get it off him, stop."
Yeah, it made me wonder, like, how much has Rocket and Nebula talked about them? Like, they clearly have a connection in this movie, and I think that makes sense because it really kind of started in Endgame when they realized that the two of them survived the snap, and you just see the two of them at the beginning of that movie sitting together on the stairs of their ship, and you just know that they basically created a friendship during those 5 years without the rest of the Guardians.
Yeah.
So the whole deal with the med pack is they say somebody has implanted something into Rocket to keep him as proprietary technology. We know that somebody is the high evolutionary. And basically you need what they learn later is a 1 million digit long passcode to override it to be able to tinker with him or use a med pack on him or anything like that. Otherwise it's a kill switch and it's just going to kill him instantly. They estimate they have about 20 or 48 hours to find this code, and that kind of kicks off our adventure.
Yeah, he is labeled property of Orgo Corp, so they know who and how to get to him, but just getting that code and finding out that Orgo Corp is just a subsidiary, and everything leads back to the High Evolutionary.
Yeah, so they take off. They leave Kraglin and Cosmo in charge, even though the two of them are fighting because Cosmo embarrassed Kraglin, and Kraglin called Cosmo a bad dog, and you don't want to do that. That's just hurtful. But they leave them in charge of nowhere. They go off to Orgo Corp. Okay, before we talk about anything else, I want to know what you think of the, I guess I'll call them uniforms of the security staff for the Orgo Corp.
I saw like a small 1 foot by 1 foot square snippet of the uniform that was posted by Nathan Fillion a while back with no context whatsoever. But the overall look of it, for the thought process that this is a whole organic environment that they created, I understand it, but it looked just really, really weird. Looked like something out of an early 2000s video game.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of the look of it. I think the sequence overall is really strong, but the look of these things, like to me, it looks like like the kind of spray insulation, that you would spray into your walls and stuff, and then watch it like foam up. To me,
Yeah.
that's what I think of when I look at it, or maybe some kind of like messed up looking marshmallow. And then, of course, this is also the sequence in which the Guardians, they're headed to Orgo Corp, and they get the help of the Ravagers to sneak them in. Sylvester Stallone and his crew are there. This is where Gamora comes back into play. Gamora, again, remember from the past, she is now a Ravager. Really curious about how she teamed up with them and hooked up with them, but she is now a Ravager, and she's joining the Guardians, but only because she's being paid 100,000 credits or units or whatever they call them to go do. At this point, were you expecting Gamora to be so antagonistic with the Guardians, or did you think she would be more like when we last saw her in Infinity War?
I assumed that she would be a kind of unwilling participant, that she was just with them because she didn't know what else to do, but she wasn't like Team Guardians of the Galaxy, but she was with them. I didn't expect her to be with the Ravagers and be so deep with the Ravagers. I mean, they loved having her around, and she loved obviously being with them. So she was really in deep with them.
Yeah, yes, like absolutely, she's full on one of them, like full-fledged member at this point. We would learn later, like clearly has both the respect and love of the Ravagers. The Ravagers give them spacesuits, and yes, they look like Among Us characters, or they look like Power Rangers in space, or something going on there, right? Like that's just what I thought of when I watched it. It's like if you know the game Among Us, just look it up if you don't know it. Google Among Us mobile game or whatever. That's the suits they were wearing.
Yeah. And I love how during this scene and the scene coming out of Adam Warlock's attack on Nowhere, how they are just seamlessly weaving in and out the backstory of Rocket through the flashbacks while he's on the ventilator. And you're getting his little snippets that built the story, but it doesn't just cold interrupt what's going on. Like they weave it through very well of, okay, now we're at this point and we're here and we're having to do this because here's a flashback, here's how Rocket got here, here's more of Rocket's backstory, and how they keep doing those flashbacks to him on the ventilator and seamlessly weaving it in and out of this story was really well done.
Absolutely. They show the High Evolutionary basically doing his experiments on young Rocket and giving him all these implants and just throwing him in a jail cell with these three other animals. One who would be eventually would take the names Lila, Teeths, and Floor. Floor because she was laying on the floor. Teeths because, well, they all have teeth. His are the most prominent. And then Lila took the name. Now, I don't know about the other two, but Lila is a character from the comics who is basically a love interest for Rocket.
Yeah.
A little bit different relationship here. Clearly, she was older than he was, but you're right. Like the flashbacks show, like young Rocket, who I believe was voiced by Sean Gunn for the record. They show like young Rocket. He's in pain, he's scared, he's frightened, he's shaking, and they help nurture him back to health. And then they show them at play later in one of the later flashbacks. We also get glimpses of the High Evolutionary working with him and teaching him, and just seeing like how smart Rocket actually is. We start to get our first glimpses of that during these flashbacks.
Yeah, and they really show how Rocket is still a raccoon at heart. Like in these early flashbacks, he's talking as if he's a 4 or 5-year-old, but he's got the intelligence in some areas, as he shows when he's talking to the High Evolutionary. He's doing complex science, but he's also figuring out what music is at the same time.
Right. Like he's like, what is sound? Or like what to say, what am I hearing? And no, it's music. He's, do we like it? Yeah, we do like this music. It's 4,000-year-old recording or whatever the number was. And yeah, the High Evolutionary has turned. And side note, the High Evolutionary in the comics has his hands in a lot of different pots. He's got ties with Wanda and Pietro. He's all over. He's ties with the Animan, which they did reference in this. Travis Hines in the chat says the High Evolutionary is an asshat. That's also an accurate statement. He's all over the place. But one thing that he does do is his goal here is trying to make like perfect creatures. In his eyes, what are perfect creatures? And he doesn't necessarily mean in his image, just he's trying to make a perfect society and perfect the universe. And he's sending these poor animals through millions of years of evolution in just a few seconds, and they're coming out super violent, super rageful. It's like one of them looked like a Ninja Turtle or something, but he was super pissed off. And Rocket just looks at this process one time and figures out the problem. I can't tell you what the problem is. I've seen the movie 3 times and I still don't understand it. But Rocket can tell you what the problem is. Too much of this gas or whatever was getting in at one time, and this sets the High Evolutionary on this long journey to figure out how Rocket knows what he knows.
Yeah, when Rocket started talking and he was trying to explain the science of it, all I thought to myself each time that I saw it was, man, I wish I paid more attention in microbiology, because he rattled that off so well.
Comic book science, right? Comic book science. That's exactly what it is. So back to the Orgo Corp. The team, they've made their entry. They break into the facility. There's a hilarious scene where Peter thinks he's having a private conversation with Gamora as he's trying to work his game on her, and finds out that everybody can hear him and is making fun of him. I love Nebula's line about, we just hoped it would stop on its own. Like, that's why we didn't say anything.
I mean, it was quality Guardians of the Galaxy banter. Like, it's what you would expect going into their banter as a team.
It was. It's definitely that. It's the same type of banter we got in the first and second movies, but I think as a whole, this movie had less of it. Like to me, this movie definitely funny was the least funny of the trilogy, and so these moments that did really genuinely make me laugh, like they really served to break up a lot of tension because there's a lot of tension in this movie, especially from those rocket flashbacks.
Yeah.
So once they're inside Orgo Corp, we get another. We get a run in with the security guy, spray installation stuff. Nathan Fillion and his team, and they talk their way out of it. And this is when they break off into two different groups. And I gotta say, Mantis and Drax is such a. I love that pairing. I love that pairing. And Volume 2, Drax was, call it what it is. He's pretty mean to her, but he doesn't necessarily understand like emotions and things like that. In the in the holiday special, you see the friendship they have here, and in this one, Mantis dishes it out every bit as much as Drax does, and you can tell they just constantly are pranking each other.
Yeah, he even makes mention of the fact that she's done some pranks on him before with her powers to make him feel certain ways and make other people feel some types of ways. And she does it again when they're one-on-one and the team splits up, and she introduces Drax to his new love interest, Bleedle Snort.
So ridiculous. And like when she does that, she's like, "You're gonna fall in love with him," and just points over at Drax. And you can tell Drax is just like, "Come on, just stop doing it. What's
Not
your name?"
again.
And he sounds so defeated. Drax the Destroyer. He just so, oh my gosh, I was laughing so much at this. But again, he does stuff to her too. Like there's the whole thing with the Zarg nuts earlier in the movie when she said she wanted one, and right in front of her, he's like, "Well, I'm all out of them. Sorry." And then he eats another one. Just they're constantly messing with each other. It's like they're siblings.
Yeah.
In fact, they're kind of more like siblings than Mantis and Peter are, who we know are actual siblings.
Yeah, her powers are very feelings based. His is very straightforward logic based, and the way that they play off of each other is just, it makes for some good lighthearted moments.
Yeah, I love the pairing of them, and we'll get to the end of it. Well, I'll save that thought for the end when we find out what Mantis's fate is in this movie. But the other team is Nebula, Gamora, and Rocket, Nebula, Gamora, and Peter. And I noticed when Gamora split, she's the one who split the teams up. Nebula is the only one she called by name. Peter she calls Quinn instead of Quill. Drax was Doofus. Mantis was Bug. And and then just Nebula. Like Nebula is the only one, her sister, of course, that she has any actual respect for. She breaks up the teams. Peter and them, they go and they're basically working on finding the file for 89P13, which is the file that the designation that the High Evolutionary has given Rocket. They learned that when they were looking through his computer code basically earlier. What did you think of just seeing the different methods that Gamora and Peter were trying to get information out from this girl Aurora or whatever her name was?
I feel like I did wonder at times if Gamora was purposely calling Peter the wrong name as a kind of I'm keeping you at a distance type deal. Like, I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of telling you that I know your name. I know who you are. You annoy me, and I want to keep you at a distance. So I'm going to keep calling you the wrong name on purpose. I did like that Star-Lord was like, hey, you get to see the Star-Lord charm for the first time all over again.
Yeah, I'm completely convinced she was just putting him down the whole time. Because there were a couple times when like she seemed to acknowledge it and actually call him by name. But no, he was Quinn throughout the movie quite a bit.
So, but their duality, him trying to, well, I'm gonna win him over with the charm. You'll get to see how charming I am. I'm such a great guy. And she's just like, look, I don't want to be around you. I don't want to do this. I just want to get in, get out. Let's go. I'm a whole different person.
Yep. Yeah, completely with you there. And it's so funny to see Peter trying to just talk his way into getting the information he needs. Gamora just straight up puts a gun to her face and just says, you're going to die if you don't just give us what we need. they are able to find the file on 89P13 on Rocket, but unfortunately, that's right around the time when the jig is up and Jennifer Holland, Jennifer Holland, is that her name? Gunn's wife.
Yep.
She's in the movie. I saw some people questioning that. I'm like, come on, you guys don't care when Sean Gunn is in every one of his movies, or you don't care when Michael Rooker is. It's only a problem with his wife. I don't know what the difference is here, but well, I do know what the difference is, but I don't think you need me to say it. Regardless, she's in the movie. It's super brief, small role. She does have a hilarious part where Gamora shoots her in the leg, but she calls security because she realizes these people are here. It's a fake. And I tell you, like, I thought that this was going to be a pretty easy victory for the Guardians. They were going to destroy these insulation guys and just demolish them and send them on their way. But that's really not what happened.
It's not. I mean, they had a full on fight on their hands, and yeah, it surprised me. And going back to what you're saying about James Gunn's wife being in here, having her cameo, I put it in the same category I put Helena Bonham Carter. She is in everything that Tim Burton does.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
at this point, I'm used to it. If I see Tim Burton's name on something, I know she is going to have a cameo, but she does a good job, and I let her be her. And it's the same thing here. I mean, she's not starring in the movie. You did not replace one of the main characters with her. She literally has a couple of scenes. She makes the most of her scenes, yes, but she literally has a couple of scenes and she does a good job. Like, I fail to see the problem here. People are throwing their friends and loved ones in movies all the time. But as far as the fight scene / escape, this was the first time that I thought that one of the Guardians was actually going to die.
Right?
This was
Like,
the moment where I was like, oh, it's happening. We are finishing up the first act, and it is happening.
yeah, going into this, I was 100% convinced that two of our Guardians were absolutely going to die, and I thought it was likely a third one might as well. And I was convinced I knew who the two were. The third one I wasn't sure about. And here I was like, oh man, here this might be the first one because they have this gun and it lays Drax out, and you know how powerful he is, and it lays him out. They hit him with it twice, and what ultimately saves the day, it wasn't Gamora shooting people. It wasn't Gamora shooting Gunn's wife in the leg. It wasn't her threatening to kill everyone. It was the Star-Lord charm that ultimately got them out of it. And I think that is awesome because he talked his way into being allowed access to the system because he claimed he was going to talk down the security team. And instead, he just overrode their suits and sent them all packing.
Yeah. And I like how after he did that, he turns to Gamora and goes, I'm not a total idiot. Like, it looks like I'm just out here having fun. I do know some of what I'm doing here.
Yeah, just a little bit. And I mean, he's there's a reason he's leading the Guardians and that he's captain of nowhere and stuff. He is pretty good at what he's doing here. But this does kind of take us back to the end of Act 1. They basically get the file they're looking for. It's got the passcode right. They're going to go back to save Rocket. Let's go ahead and take our second ad break here. So again, remember the volume is going to be louder on these. So turn your volume down for just a second. We'll be right back in 3, 2, 1. All right, and we are back. So catching up with Rocket in the past, basically in the flashbacks, he at this point they've got the names. He's an adult. They're like making plans for the future. We're going to get out of here. The master, the sire they called him, is going to take us to this new world that he's creating, this perfect place, and we're going to just fly spaceships and look at the blue sky all day long. And it just, as it's jumping back and forth between the present day and these flashbacks, like, man, buddy, this is not going to end well for you.
Yeah, it's not. And then once they get back to present day and everyone's standing around and they're looking at this hollow projection of Rocket's procedures, and you can see the expression on everyone's face like, oh, we had an inkling that Rocket's been through some things, but we didn't know Rocket's been through some stuff.
Yeah, like Peter makes a comment of like he won't really talk about it. And even Nebula, who I think did know more than Peter did, says, wow, this is worse than what happened to me. And if you're Nebula, like you think back to what Nebula had being done to her that we saw being done to her in Infinity War, like that's saying something if Nebula thinks what Rocket went through is even worse than what Thanos did to her.
Yeah.
So they're looking through this and they realize the passcode is missing, but there's a log file and they can find out that basically it was removed and saved to this one random henchman's head. And they've got like a computer on his head, kind of looks like Nebula, actually, like just the computer seared into their brain. But they realize they're going to have to go after this guy. That's where it is. But because of having the file from OrgoCorp, they are able to learn of the location of the High Evolutionary, and he is on what we would learn is called Counter Earth.
Yeah. And we get a good line about them going after the High Evolutionary, and they're like, it's a trap. And Star-Lord says, a trap isn't a trap if the trap's a trap. And it's a face-off. And I'm just like, I know it was a silly line, but I absolutely love that line because it just, the ego that's inside of Star-Lord at that moment was just, it was on full display. Like, nah, I got this.
The ego inside of Star-Lord. Yeah, you could take that multiple ways and you'd still be right to do it. Throughout this time, we do get this flashback of the High Evolutionary. And this is a great time to mention it because Jim in the chat mentions that the High Evolutionary just chewed up and spit out the entire set, which for the record, he was on Peacemaker as well. Great job on that show if you haven't seen it. But there's this line where he's seemingly going mad and he's screaming at Rocket to find out, how did Rocket figure out the problem? He said it worked. How did you figure out? And he just screams at him, I made you. How did you know? I didn't know you knew. How did you know? And forgive me, I'm not even going to try. I can't say the actor's name. I will butcher it and I will feel horrible, but he does a phenomenal job throughout this entire movie. I completely agree with Jim that he just chews up and spits out the entire scene. In fact, more often than not, he's a scene stealer. He just did an incredible job in this. And this was one of the highlights, I think, when he screams, I made you. How did you know?
His descent into madness over the course of the flashbacks, but then being so straight-laced when you're seeing him in current times, that duality was incredible. I mean, like, you just watched as they went flashback after flashback, the slow descent into madness, the going crazy, when he's bouncing through the hallways, yelling 89P13, 89P13, and you can tell he's losing his mind. And I believe his head side henchman, the one who had the codes in his head, his name was Teal. Teal is trying to like go, Sire was just, he's been working hard, so you know how Sire gets when he's working hard, but everyone can tell, okay, he's going a little bit nuts over here.
Yeah, and they said like he was getting one of his treatments and stuff. And the High Evolutionary did make a comment at some point in one of the flashbacks about like using some of his treatments on himself to like elevate himself. And I kind of chalked at first that up to why in the flashbacks his face mostly looks normal, right? Like it doesn't look like it's damaged or whatever. But in the more present day scenes, there's clearly some sort of damage around the sides and outline of his face, right? Almost looks like another Face Off nod. You know, there's Face Off. If it's not a trap, it's a Face Off. Well, this is more like Face Off the movie when they were really taking people's faces off of him. And it was kind of jarring, and it looks a little funky, and you eventually will find out why it looks so funky. Well, because he's horrifically scarred under there. But yeah, so at this point, they're going to go to Counter Earth. Like we got to go to where we think this guy is, this whatever henchman who's got the code, and they go to Counter Earth. And Counter Earth is a thing that the High Evolutionary has basically, like, his whole goal is to make the perfect place, right? And he loves the Earth. He thinks that basically the Earth would be perfect other than all the prejudice and bigotry and things like that. You know, well, I mean, maybe he's not wrong on that statement, but he takes so much from the Earth. He takes so much of the culture, and he clearly models, or at least off of American culture, I should say, and he clearly models this town off of it. Like, it looks like you're on just a regular planet, and you just, a woman's out walking her baby stroller and stuff, and then she turns around and she's like a pig of some sort, right? And the baby's a pig, and they got these huge tusks and stuff. And maybe it's a warthog, not a pig, but you get the idea. I knew this was coming from the trailers, but it's still jarring to see like a giant panda bear mowing the lawn, right?
Yeah. And so in the trailers we saw the scene with the ball play out, which was a hilarious Drax moment. Of course, but then to watch the community act like a community, even though you had the quote unquote bat family over here, and then you had the warthog family over here, you had the panda cutting the grass, and the bird who was the male lady, and all this other stuff. Everyone still, they had their own communication language. And also, this is the scene where we first see everyone suited up in the traditional Guardians of the Galaxy attire, and everyone stepping off in their suits. And when they all came off just decked out in their suits, I was like, okay, it's getting real.
Yeah, and it's mostly the traditional attire. They're missing one thing. I'm like, I wish we'd gotten it. I wish Star-Lord had his mask for it. You know, like go full on. He didn't use the mask at all in this one, but it's okay. I guess they didn't want to mess with it. Whatever. But and that's a nitpick, really, right? Like that. I mean, who cares? He wasn't wearing his mask. But yeah, the whole Guardians attire is pretty awesome. But yeah, that scene with the ball, they come down, they're looking at, they're freaking out. We don't want to. We're not here to hurt you. We're trying to be calm. Things are getting tense because Drax threw the ball way too hard. And Nebula yells, "Groot, go full kaiju," and he just gets massive. And at that point, everyone scatters. Groot, man, the way he can just grow that fast, like, yeah, I mean, we obviously have known he's really powerful, but I'm like, he is getting more and more powerful as he goes. And I kind of think, I mean, technically, this Groot is the offspring of Groot from Guardians 1. I think he's more powerful. We didn't see Groot in Guardians 1 do anything like some of the stuff we saw him do here.
Yeah, this was Groot on another level multiple times throughout this, from the opening fight with Adam Warlock to this moment, and then there's two more standout moments for Groot after this. He shows off some skills that he hasn't shown off before.
Yeah, but eventually they settle things down, and Star-Lord's he talks to the Bat Woman, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, and convinces her to at least try to help them, right? There's a huge language barrier, but they're able to show like a hologram of what Rocket looks like. So get the idea, hey, we're trying to save our friend. Peter draws a picture of the scientists that they're looking at, and it's a horrible looking picture that like a 3-year-old would draw. But of course, Drax and everyone's like, wow, that's really good. Can I hang it up in my apartment? But this leads to the scene that probably got the single biggest laugh from me. They borrow the woman's car because, of course, this planet that is modeled after Earth, there are cars everywhere. They borrow the woman's car. Peter knows how to get in the car. Turns out he doesn't know how to drive. He's never driven before. Nebula does not know how to get in the car.
Like I feel like you're punching the keyhole here.
Yeah, and so this, like, I'm just cracking up at. I think the whole thing is funny, and at this moment, I had forgotten that I had heard ahead of time that the MCU's first F-bomb was going to be in this movie. I had forgotten about it, and when it's used in this scene for Star-Lord to tell her to just open the door, I lost it. Just absolutely lost it. Tears coming down. I'm laughing so much. It was just completely unexpected.
Yeah, and knowing that it was ad-libbed, or the rumor is that it was ad-libbed, and just the way that he said it was the way that any of us in that moment, like, just open the door. And by this point, like, well, what do I do? Get in that effing car. Like, that is the way that a lot of other people would have reacted in that moment.
Oh my gosh. I was not, I had forgotten. I honestly thought Deadpool would be the first time we heard a Marvel Studios production drop some F-bombs on us. And I'm sure Deadpool will raise the bar for the volume of them, but technically PG-13 does allow for one. And Marvel Studios finally decided this was the time. And I saw a thing where Chris Pratt said it was an ad lib, and often those actors will kind of do that thing as a signal to the director of like, okay, we're tired of doing this over and over and over again. Like, get what you need so we can move on. And apparently that's the one they went with. So I think it's hilarious.
Yeah. It's also interesting that at the same time this scene was going on, you get a little bit more information about Adam Warlock as well, in an interrogation scene that doesn't go all too well, where he's supposed to the Sovereign has a Ravager and they want some information on him, and Adam Warlock is supposed to, just kind of put the screws to him, ends up just incinerating the guy, and he's like,
show him you mean business. Straight up kills him and then takes his dog, his alien dog, whatever it's called, but takes his dog.
He's like, "What? I thought you said Chum." So it's a reminder that while he is so powerful, he is still just basically a child.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like even Aisha says to the High Evolutionary, like you pulled him out of his pod too early. He's still a child. It's like it's like he's physically a man. He's physically like godlike powers. You know, like he's not invincible, but he's up there. He is a Superman level character, and he's just a kid, right? Like he doesn't know any better. He's still learning, and I don't know. I grew to like his character. You know, I've heard some stuff. I think it was Travis on the Geekverse said that like you could take him out of the movie, and basically, other than you need to hurt Rocket a different way at the start of the movie, the rest of the movie could play out the same. That is technically true. I'm with you on that, Travis. I agree with that. But I still liked him. I'm glad they included him. And I don't for a second believe this is the only movie we're going to see him in this. I thought Will Poulter did a good job. No, he didn't have a ton to do, but this isn't the only time we're going to see Adam Warlock in the MCU.
Yeah, and he also provided some strong yet comedic moments, like especially with him and the dog. Them arriving on ship, the dog peeing on the ship because he's scared of everything happening and things like
Yeah.
that. Him constantly yelling for his mother. But I will say, a lot of the scenes with Adam Warlock, including a scene that's about to come up, really set a good tone for what James Gunn can do in the future with this Superman movie.
I completely agree. 100%. Thought that every single time I was watching Adam Warlock fly on screen and like showcase his power.
Yeah.
All right, so they finally get the car. They go to the giant, massive spaceship, and they go in to talk to the High Evolutionary. Nebula has to stay out because her arm is a weapon, but the others are allowed in. They don't know that we're about to find out Groot has smuggled in a few weapons because they like you look at Groot, he looks naked. You don't think there's anything there. You know, he's just
Groot is packing.
Groot is packing lot, yes. And at this point, we finally get to see. We see Star-Lord go after the henchman guy who's got the passcode, and we get the first interactions with the High Evolutionary and the Guardians in the present day. You know, not just 89P13 in the past, but the present day Guardians as well. And again, back to what Jim says, the High Evolutionary just chewing up the scenery on these scenes. I loved watching you maybe could say there was some overacting in there, but I loved it. I thought it was great the way he was doing this and the way he interacted with all these other characters.
Yeah. So they had two High Evolutionary scenes going on at the same time. You get the flashback scene as well as his present day standoff with Peter and with Groot. So, but in that flashback, as he's again teetering on the brink of insanity, and then you get what I feel is the first major death of the movie, and something that kind of was like a little emotional moment because it was like, oh, did not expect that. But just the High Evolutionary in both of those scenes, just kind of like you see his descent into madness, and it's juxtaposed with the I'm in control of everything stoic overarching villain.
Yeah, this is a good time to go ahead and say what he does in the past with Lila and the others. He tells Rocket, he tells 89P13 that you're not going to the perfect world. You are just what did he call him? No, he called him a step on his path later. He's like, you look like a bunch of people fat fingered hacking together a bunch of mistakes that we can learn from for the people who actually matter. That's what he told him. And Rocket goes back. He goes back to his cell. He's told, and he overhears the High Evolutionary order his henchmen, take his brain out in the morning, incinerate the rest of them, incinerate the rest of Group 89. He tells the others he's not going to take us. He's going to kill us all in the morning. And at this point, we saw him earlier steal one part. He's been stealing several parts, and he does what he does, and he's an inventor, and he puts together and he makes a key card. He gets them out. He opens both jail cells because technically Lila and Teeths are in a different one from him and Floor. He gets to come out. He gets to embrace with Lila. They have this really touching hug, and then she gets shot. The High Evolutionary just shoots her, kills her. Literally the smoking gun in his arm. Little surprised they have like a traditional fire like gunpowder gun in space
Seems a
wherever
little
they're at.
seems a little beneath the High
It
Evolutionary to
does, but
just pull
I'm
out.
I'm going to chalk it up to his obsession with Earth and Earth culture, because otherwise I don't know. But regardless, it made for a good effect.
Yeah, and she falls to the ground, she's staring up, you see the life go out of her, you see Rocket break, and then that's kind of where you get your first knowledge of why the High Evolutionary's face looks different between the two, because
Yeah,
Rocket just goes off.
yep, just unleashes claws the living crap out of him, takes the gun, fires at a couple security guards who roll up as well. He's able to defeat them. The High Evolutionary is on the ground, writhing in pain. He's killed the security guards, and he turns around to get the other two to leave. And that's when he finds out that the guards may have missed him, but they hit floor, they hit teeth in the back. They're both just dead. And it's like, man, I've never even heard of these two characters, and I'm sad that they died. So it's like, oh, damn it. It's like I
Yeah.
wasn't what I should have expected it. And I knew they weren't going to make it out, but still seeing it was a hard watch that first time.
Yeah, I knew Teats and I knew Floor weren't going to make it out. I did not expect what happened with Lyra, just because of how integral she is to his character in the comics. I mean, when it comes to Rocket, she is a major player in his story in the comics. So to have that happen was a little bit of a shock, but it also shows you how Rocket kind of started to become as battle hardened as he is. Like, you see him running off, you see him take a ship and fly out of there, and you just watch his face change from the cowering young raccoon to the, okay, now I'm pissed. Now I'm gonna start planning war. Now I'm gonna start planning how I'm gonna get back.
Yes. Yes. And there is just he does briefly get that little hint of a smile when he sees the blue sky that they had been talking about. And that's nice to see. But of course, he's super pissed off because the only three friends he's ever known in his entire life are all just murdered in front of him. In the present day, Peter is getting nowhere with getting the code from the High Evolutionary. So he tells Groot straight up, just kill them all. And Groot kind of opens up like a wood panel on his chest, pulls a grenade out, throws it at him, knocks everybody down. And then he pulls out like what, 6, 8 guns, and he has all these weapons inside, and he just starts going crazy. He had smuggled in Star-Lord's 2 blasters, and so they're just back to back shooting. That scene was in the trailer, but man, did it look really good here.
Yeah, when they went back to back and they're just unloading on the entire room, it was a pretty
It's a
awesome
fun
scene.
one, yeah.
Like, and just watching Groot just like gun, gun, gun. All you see is tree limbs start pulling guns out of everywhere.
Yeah, that scene, that's one of those scenes that when the movie comes to Disney Plus, I will absolutely just be rewatching that sequence like on its own. Like, oh, I don't have time for the full movie right now, but I'm going to take 10 minutes and watch this watch this fight. And it's not even 10 minutes long, but it ends with Peter pushing the henchman, the scientist that has the passcode, out the spaceship. The High Evolutionary has decided he's just going to wipe counter Earth and start over. So he's literally blowing the place up, and Peter jumps out without a parachute, pushing this guy to the ground. We've seen all these explosions. One of them killed Aisha while Adam Warlock was racing to get back to her. The explosions are powerful enough. They did hurt Adam Warlock. Did you expect Groot to grow some wings? I did not.
I did not expect the Groot flying scene, or the Groot gliding scene. That was pretty awesome. Same thing with the ferocity of their landing,
Yeah.
as they're holding Till and just using him as a cushion and then landing in the water with him. I was like, "Oh, that was pretty dark." But going back to the High Evolutionary deciding, okay, you know what? Counter is not what I thought. We've got all these bad things that are still happening. I tried to make a perfect society, yet I still have these animal humanoids selling drugs to each other and bullies and things like that. Like, I haven't solved that yet. So, you know what? I'm getting rid of them. And when he decides to blow up the planet, it gave me very much, as Adam Warlock is racing to the High Priestess Aisha, it gave me vibes of Krypton. And that's why I say, like, it some of those scenes gave me hope for the Superman, because I'm just like, okay, watching, and you're seeing like the Bat family are standing out there and other families are just standing there, and then boom, explosion here, explosion there. Um, Gamora's trying to get away and get to safety. She's in control of Rocket because she's trying to keep him safe until they come back, and just watching this planet explode and all these things happening. Like, I did not expect Aisha to die. I did not expect this planet to start getting blown up like that. But it was a great scene. And like most of the scenes, very well shot. Like the shot of Adam flying through the explosions to Aisha, just the way that they cut those flying scenes, very well done.
Yeah, and some of that's in the trailer, but it does. It looks so good. And you mentioned Gamora was watching Rocket. That's because Mantis and Drax, really Drax forced Mantis into it. They abandoned their post. They were supposed to be protecting Rocket, staying with the ship, protect Rocket. They went after Nebula, who was left outside. So the three of them are now trying to get on the high evolutionary ship, which is taking off. And Gamora is trying to save Rocket from the War Pig that had showed up a few minutes ago, and then Adam Warlock killed the War Pig. And then Warlock raced off back after his mom, Aisha, which gave Gamora an opening to take back control of the ship. She's got Rocket. She's got the ship. Doesn't know how to fly this ship. Makes comment that, but she figures it out well enough. And so we end up with Nebula and Drax and Mantis trying to save Peter and Groot, not knowing that they're good. They're off. They're out. They got all the information they need. If they had just stayed with the ship and followed the plan, right? Like it all would have, like the movie could have almost ended right then and there, really.
Yeah, and they had an incredible scene where Nebula just goes off on Drax and Mantis.
Yes.
Everyone's an idiot. You're a liability. You're this, you're that. And Mantis, like the strong little sister, just steps in like, no, no, no. You're not going to talk about my dude like this. Like that's my homie. That's like a big brother to me. You're not going to talk about him. Let's talk about you and your need to put people down in order to feel better about yourself because your life sucked. Why are you talking about Drax when we love Drax? Drax makes us laugh. He's great. Like, she reminds you of why these people create this family vibe with this team.
Yeah, and Mantis makes a comment about Drax that I've really been thinking about a lot, because she says Drax is the only one on the team who doesn't hate himself. And I think that's really interesting. But if you really look at it, Nebula, clearly she hates herself with what she's got going on. Rocket, you can see like he's really, really the song "I'm a Creep," like Creep is really hitting home to him, right? Like at the beginning of the movie. Obviously, Peter is in tons of pain over what's happened with Gamora. Gamora doesn't know what's going on. She's out of time. Like it, Drax is the one who he's not in that pain anymore that he was in that first movie. And that's because really, at this point, they got Ronan, and then they got the person behind Ronan with Thanos. And so it's like he has avenged his family. His wife and daughters have been avenged, but Drax is just kind of a fun-loving guy at this point. He's trying to enjoy life, and I appreciate that Mantis calls that out. And again, yeah, they mess with each other all the time. They're pranking each other all the time. She's making him fall in love with the sock. He's tricking her into getting on a bike and going off and abandoning, but like whatever. They mess with each other so much. But they used to really do genuinely care for each other in a way that they don't necessarily with everybody else. They have a weird connection, but it works for them. And I love seeing it here. And during the scene when Mantis is defending Drax to Nebula, she straight up she's like, yeah, he's stupid. He's an idiot. He's dumb. But that's okay. Like he's still, he loves us and he makes us laugh and he tries to help. And it's a great moment. And it ends with Drax saying, "You think I'm stupid?" And she just puts her hand on, says, "Just forget."
Yeah. At first, he's like, "I don't like the way you're defending me."
Yes, great little line there from him.
Yeah, and then so as this is happening, we start to see that they're trying to save Rocket. They've got the code out of Teal's head. They're going to go save Rocket. And as they're trying to get this 1 million digit code in there, Rocket's dying. I mean, he's been on this ventilator with a hole in his chest this entire time. He's starting to go. And then we get what I call the Harry Potter scene. If you've seen the last Harry Potter movie, there is a white room scene.
Mhm.
I'll say an afterlife scene, and they do the same thing
Yep.
with Rocket and with Lila, but it's so beautiful, the interaction with them, the little snuggle kiss, him saying, "Hey, I'm ready. I've done everything I can. I'm ready to let go. I'm ready to be with you. Can I just, spend my time with you?" And her response of, "I want that, but it's not your time yet."
Yeah, it hurts so bad because she straight up tells him, "Yes, you can," and then there like pauses for a beat and goes back, "But not yet." I'm like, "Oh, that's hurtful." I want Rocket to live. Don't get me wrong, but that's so hurtful to this guy. He's so upset. He's realizing he finally can have they can achieve their dream of just the four of them flying around in a spaceship together. And
Yeah.
not yet. And at this point, like they keep cutting back and forth to uh, Peter and everyone. And when I mean, give credit to Chris Pratt in this scene. Like the emotions on his face as he's screaming and crying for Rocket to live, as he's trying chest compressions, as he's saying he's not going to give up on him. Chris Pratt did a fantastic job in this scene, and the code was going like it was entering, but it was entering too slow, so he was going to die. Well, when Lila says not yet, you're not done yet, and she calls him a raccoon again, and he says I'm not actually a raccoon. He falls back into his body, like metaphorically, he falls back into his body, and the code goes super fast at this point. And lo and behold, he wakes up. He starts to wake up. They've overrun the code. They can use their fancy med packs that can cure anything, and all of a sudden Rocket, he's awake. He's okay at this point. And yes, when he got hurt so early in the movie, I kind of thought he was going to come out of it. But I'm like, they're gonna heal him soon so they can kill him at the end of the movie. This late in the movie is when I finally was like, no, he's actually gonna survive this thing.
Yeah. It was a pleasant surprise because I thought for sure that Rocket was going to die. Especially once it starts off with him in the focal point. I was like, "Oh, that's it. That basically has sealed his fate right there. He's going to be the one." To then have him come back and pop up and to be that centerpiece for everybody was a pleasant surprise.
It was. So let's go ahead and take our last ad break of the evening, and then we'll talk about this third act. So 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. All right. At this point, Rocket's awake and he realizes Nebula is calling. And this is when you find out that like everybody gets on the same page of Rocket and Groot and Peter, they're fine, right? But Nebula and Drax and Mantis, they are not fine. They are on the ship still. And it's all great when Rocket chimes in over the comms and basically says, like, oh, I'm okay. The one that really sticks out to me of everybody's reactions is Nebula. Nebula, like the relief on her face when she just takes a beat and takes a moment and like almost breaks down crying right then and there. And like to see Nebula do that was like, yeah, like this is why I genuinely believe that the connection that I thought was very possible between these characters with the events of the end of Infinity War and Endgame, that yeah, it happened. Like those two clearly bonded in that time, in that 5 years away, before the blip. And it's great to see that reflected.
Yeah. You could tell they have a connection, and it is either bonded by we were both experimented on, we were both treated poorly, we were both treated second rate, or just the fact that they are both the two who feel like they are superior to the team in every way. They've bonded and they've made this connection, and it's obvious that when he's like, "Where's Nebula?" and he calls and they have that conversation, that they have a strong bond.
Yes, they clearly have a strong bond. The whole team was it was very touching. That's just the one that stuck out. When Rocket first woke up, Peter and Groot, just the three of them had this really touching embrace. And you even see Gamora in the background kind of smile at it. Like even she was feeling good about it at this point. And she had referred to him as a pet earlier, but she's realizing he's much more than a pet. Like he's not a pet, and he is one of them. And the whole team has this embrace. I really love it. We got to mention the kids, Jube Jube. We got to mention the kids because the group that's on the spaceship, they find all these kids. Like, what they look like, 8, 10 years old, maybe somewhere in that age range, that the high evolutionary has been experimenting on. We don't know necessarily where these kids came from. Were they grown in a lab? Were they taken? Were they abducted? Like, we don't know. They never actually tell us, but we find out that Drax can communicate with them. And this is long after Mantis and Nebula were really struggling and were freaking them out. Basically, both of them yelling at each other, yelling at the kids, trying to tell them, you need to clear everyone off of this side of the building, off the starboard side, because it's going to get attacked and blown up. Because, nowhere, obviously, nowhere. I didn't realize they could fly nowhere full on like a spaceship, but they can, and nowhere's going to come in and blow a hole in the thing. Awesome. Loved it. But it's Drax who's able to get through to the kids. And he pretends to be a monkey or whatever it passes for a monkey on his planet, because that was not a monkey on Earth by any means. And he gets through to these kids. He makes them laugh. He makes them happy. Gets a little joke. He makes it lighthearted, and he talks to them in their language. And this takes Nebula by surprise, seeing the way he interacts with these kids and finding out that he knew this language. And he just says, "Hey, you never asked if I knew this language. Like, you didn't give him any credit for knowing." I thought that was a really great moment for the Drax character to be the one to get, for Drax the Destroyer to be the one to get through to all these frightened and terrified kids.
Yeah, and this is what I was saying when I feel like this was, argumentally probably Drax's best scene that we see him in, because it shows the true core of Drax. Like, his pain comes from losing his family. His pain comes from his love as a husband and a father, not just as this warrior, but a warrior who has lost his family. He's lost the things that he loves, and is what has his fire. Now he's looking at these kids, and he's looking at them not as a warrior or a destroyer. He's looking at them as a father, and he's like, this is what these kids need right now. Nebula, you're yelling at them, calling them idiots. Some do this, they don't understand. Mantis, you're yelling at Nebula, it's scaring the kids. I'm going to talk to them on their level, just like I would have talked to my daughter.
Yes.
And this is how I would have interacted with her. And it is such a sweet moment with him, just saying, hey, there's more sides to me, and this is more of the heart that I bring to this team.
Yeah, it's such a touching moment to see him get to do that. And this really takes Nebula by surprise, and it gets Nebula to finally like look at Drax differently and like show him some respect. And I think she shows him immense respect at the a little bit later in the movie. We'll get to that. But Mantis, it's going to be her turn now. The High Evolutionary takes him and dumps him in this pit, and it's got 3 of the Obelisk in it. I think that's how you say it. It's the same creature that was at the start of Guardians Volume 2 that they fought. And Mantis even makes the comment of, "Oh, they don't eat people, they eat batteries," right? And she figures out that they're just scared, and she uses her powers a little bit to help calm, and she is able to talk down these 3 creatures. Think back to the beginning of Guardians Volume 2 when Baby Groot was doing the dancing in the opening, and there's this fight and this battle, and like the Guardians are all struggling to take down one of them, and she talks down 3 of them, and that takes Nebula by surprise. So in the span of just a few minutes, Nebula has basically called into question everything she believed about Drax and Mantis. She went from having zero respect for either of them and just putting up with them to full on understanding the worth and the value that they bring to the team.
Yeah, you get a sense that there is a lot more to Mantis. And I was sitting there thinking, I was like, man, I wish he had been there at the beginning of the Guardians of the Galaxy 2 when they were having this fight and Groot's doing his on-off dance and things like that, and they're trying to get out for that because they were struggling, and here she is just reining them in.
So the order of operations here, I want to talk about Nowhere for a second, and then we'll get back to what actually happens on the High Evolutionary ship. As Kraglin brings Nowhere up to it and basically puts it right up against the evolutionary spaceship, he releases a bunch of Hellspawn, which is basically a bunch of animals with like cybernetic legs and stuff, and they have jetpacks or like rocket boots or whatever, and they're flying around. They attack Nowhere, and this is when we get a scene that I wondered how they were going to do it. The thing about James Gunn is Michael Rooker has been in like every single one of his projects at some point or another. He's had something to do with it. No, he wasn't technically in Peacemaker, but he's in that world. He was in the Suicide Squad, but he has been a part of everything James Gunn has did. And this is where Michael Rooker shows up. We saw at the beginning of the movie, Kraglin's still struggling to learn how to work the arrow. Right, learn how to fly. He accidentally stuck at Nebula. Yeah, he did try shooting it at Adam Warlock, but that didn't do any good. Yondu tells him to use his heart. Right, just use your heart when you fly this thing. Like he sees Michael, like he sees Yondu in this thing, and it has a vision of him. Use your heart. And I was hoping this was going to happen. And Kraglin just pops off, taking out all of these Hellspawn. I absolutely love that they gave Sean Gunn this moment. It's like easily his best moment in the entire Guardians trilogy.
Yeah. Hitting him with the slow motion at one point. You gave him all the badassery you could. You were just like, you know what? Here's Kraglin's moment to shine. It's been a long road for poor Kraglin and getting to where he's at now. So he's going to get his moment to shine as well. And the whole battle with him, and then him and Cosmo kind of making up at that point and getting back on the same page.
The arrow does get stuck. He misses like the main Hellspawn guy, the one who was with Warpig earlier, and as he's trying to get it back, Cosmo jumps in, uses her telekinesis, and smashes the last one. And he had called her a bad dog earlier, and she was really upset about this. And he finally just says she's a good dog. And they made up. It's great. And yeah, of course, it's so obvious that was going to happen at some point in the movie. She's going to do something that helps, and he's going to tell her she's a good. Like I think every single person knew that was going to happen, but it was still a fun moment.
Yeah. And then right after this, it goes straight to High Evolutionary, and he's going crazy over Rocket. I mean, just absolutely, the man is mad about Rocket, and you see a little mutiny going, a little vote of no confidence.
I really
his
enjoyed
remaining
that
person, yeah, and like, you're kind of taking it too far. Why don't we just fall back? You know what? We don't even need this raccoon. We're good. We can just throw over somewhere else. And he's just showing that he is fixated on Rocket. He has to have 89P13. It's his. He wants him back.
Yep.
He wants to know how come he knew more than he did.
Exactly.
And they try and mutiny, and High Evolutionary just goes full power, just lights up the room. Goes at one point, I talked to somebody else who saw it yesterday, that he went full Super Saiyan from Dragon Ball Z, just with the power up.
I can see that.
Blew out the room, and you just saw, okay, he's still in control. And this is right before, in my opinion, and I'm pretty sure yours, the greatest scene in this entire movie.
It is. And that scene with the High Evolutionary had a couple more of those great moments from him. Like at one point she says something about God, and he just screams, "There is no God. That's why I stepped in." She says, "Well, we had 89P13, but," and he just goes, "But," that rancid word, and just the delivery that he does on these, just so much fun to watch. So much fun to see him. Like I'm excited to see. I probably won't see it again in theaters. That said, my dad hasn't gone yet, so maybe I will. But regardless, I'm excited to see the movie again, just if nothing else, just to watch the High Evolutionary. But you're right. The coolest freaking action scene of the entire movie, of the entire Guardians trilogy, and one of the coolest in the entire MCU, is about to happen when our team gets back together. They meet back up on the Evolutionary ship, and they basically run into each other through happenstance. And that's when Drax and Mantis and Nebula say, "No, we can't leave yet. There's all these kids on board. There's all these kids here. We can't just leave them. They're all going to die." Rocket says he's done running, and he turns around and starts walking. And then Groot just says, "Well, that's my boy. I'm going with him. Where he goes, I go." So he starts walking with him. Mantis starts walking. They all just start walking in a line. And even Gamora, after a little eye roll, starts going, and they realize they're going after it. Drax picks up the pace, gets in front, opens the door. And when this door opens, it's a hallway. And I tell you, David, I love hallway scenes. Like, I love them. But I especially love what to me is the true, because of Daredevil, of course, the true hallway scene where it's done in a one-shot style, a oneer. Now, in Daredevil, they really did that as a oneer. It was one shot. Obviously, this was not the case, right? But like I went and saw 1917, the movie, entirely because it was done in a one shot style. I love that style of filmmaking of clips when they do it. And they did this hallway sequence as a one shot. And like the entire time, you probably couldn't see me because my wife was sitting between us at the movie that first night, but my jaw was just dropped on the floor, like, just to the floor, like this pure spectacle that I was watching. I could not believe how amazing this scene looked.
Yeah, when the doors opened up and me and Corey, who was with us, another one of our
Mm-hmm.
friends, we both sat up and went hallway, hallway. So
Yep.
you got Beastie Boys playing in the background. You realize fight's about to happen in a hallway. And on my second viewing, I paid close attention to the credits because I was like, I want to see how they did this. And so when I saw that, the special thanks to drone operators, I'm like, you guys, you're the real MVPs here. Because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know you had a hand in this because that was just absolutely beautiful. Everyone's style of fight was on display. Gamora with her sword,
Mm-hmm.
Rocket just lighting everyone up with all his weapons. Drax in his hand to hand, he's got his knife out, but he's still just like going full on. Groot contorting himself and stretching out those limbs to take people out. It was just
Oh my God.
absolutely magnificent.
I never have done a full ranking of like what I think are the coolest action scenes in the MCU, but this is up there. This is one of the top ones. Is it number one? I don't know. I'm not willing to say that. It's probably not, but it's definitely in the top 3 or 4 or 5. Like it was absolutely incredible, and it is the coolest action scene of the Guardians trilogy, no doubt. Like this is the coolest thing James Gunn has ever done. This scene right here, like and he may never do something even cooler than like it. I tell you, I absolutely loved it. And this is the scene, even more than the thing earlier that I want to just that we talked about with Groot and Star-Lord back to back. I want to get this on Disney Plus and just go through this scene and just track like there's so much to look at. So much is going on at one time. In fact, Star Lord is throwing these like electric discs on all these guys, and he shoves one up a guy's ass at one point, right? And the first time we watched it, I was looking at something else, and it's like out of the periphery. Like, wait, did I just see what I thought I just saw? Like, yeah, you bet I was watching for that in the second one, and I realized, oh, that's he electrocuted that guy that way. It's like, oh my god, there's so many little things to this scene, so much to look at. Like I'm going to need to watch it just on repeat several more times before I feel like I could really take it all in. Truly a highlight of the movie. It's like that one scene is worth the price of admission. Yes,
Yeah.
the rest of the movie is fantastic. It's an incredible movie, but that one scene is worth the price of admission.
And Nebula, she's taking the hits again. I mean, and she's going pretty hand on with the hand to hand combat with her gun arm, but she's taking some hits, but she's still fighting. I mean, her neck gets broken back, her arm gets twisted up, and she's just still going for gold. It was just absolutely beautiful. Rocket bouncing off of everything with his gun in hand. Peter, like said, he was using his traditional guns, but he had the electrocution things. He stuck one on some guy's butt,
Yep.
two on somebody's chest, and then when he let them all go at once, and it slowed down for the electrocution also, so you could see the look on the guys. Because I was paying attention on the second viewing for the guy's face who had it stuck on his butt, just to see like how he was going to react, and his face was just priceless when he got electrocuted.
Yeah, and there were a couple times throughout the rest of the movie that there were kind of little slow motion shots, but they were very, very few and far between. This sequence did use several of them, and I thought they were used really, really well. Slow motion is something that, like, done sparingly can be really cool. And here I thought it was used to great effect. At one point, Nebula's head looked like it just fell off and was just attached by what little skin she has left. And it just snaps back into place. Like we had already seen her do a couple other times throughout the movie with her cybernetics at this point. Just, oh my, just, I absolutely floored. It's like middle of the scene. I'm like, this is one of the greatest things I've ever seen in a movie. Like I loved it that much. And I don't know, maybe other people don't necessarily agree with it, but to me, it was pushing a lot of buttons for me. You know, that one shot style, the hallway scene, and we finally have our Guardians truly teaming up for the first time in the entire movie.
Yeah, it was a great scene, and it was, in my opinion, was like, all right, James Gunn's like, if I'm leaving on a high note. You're
Oh
about to
yeah.
get all of my craziness in one swoop.
And so after this, they find the kids. They get the kids to Nebula had piloted the evolutionary ship, and Kraglin had piloted Nowhere. They basically butt them up together. Cosmo uses her telekinesis to help hold them together, and they're able to evacuate the kids off. Right, they get all the kids off. They get the kids to Nowhere. Great. Rocket discovers that's only those kids, and they had made a comment. Even Rocket made a comment of, "We're only going after the higher life forms." Later, they make a comment, one of just the random nowhere people. I thought we were only getting the higher life forms. And Peter just says, yeah, well, now we're doing all these too. And all these too is a whole bunch of animals. And Rocket, he found a whole bunch of animal cages of just young, varying ages animals, and including a bunch of baby raccoons, where he sees a sign that says they're from Earth and that they are truly raccoons. So now Rocket understands, yeah, okay, he absolutely is a raccoon. But before he could really do much with that, he takes all the uh, little baby raccoons, and he's about to leave with them, and gets stopped by the High Evolutionary. Tracks him down again. At this point, High Evolutionary is screaming at him and tells him something that to me is just so cold of, you were just a step on my path. That is harsh. You're just a step on my path. Oh my God. Like, that's like the dirtiest thing I think he said the whole movie. And he had some zingers throughout it. So dang.
Yeah. So up until this point, Thanos's "I don't even know who you are" was
Yeah.
my definitive best line. But this, yeah, no, all that stuff I did to you, all that torture, all of this, all of that. Yeah, no, you were just a stepping stone.
Just a step on my path. Oh my
I'm
gosh. So
like, oh, that had to right in the feels.
they had showed at the beginning of the movie Rocket testing these like gravity boots, right, or anti-gravity boots, basically to help control the gravity, let them stay on a ceiling, let them stay on the ground floor in areas of no gravity, whatever the case may be. He uses these to get away from the High Evolutionary, because the High Evolutionary has pinned him against the ceiling. And when he drops down, he pulls out his gun and just says, my name's not 89P13. I'm Rocket Raccoon. He finally fully embraces. They finally give him the full name, Rocket Raccoon, unleashes on him. And I'm basically cheering at this point. And then it got so much better because Star-Lord and they had realized nobody knew where Rocket was. So they went after him. Once again, they go after him. They will not leave him behind. The whole team comes. Everybody gets basically a blindsided shot on the High Evolutionary, and they're able to take him down as a team, which, that's how it should be.
Yeah, including Gamora, who had a nice little vicious, again referencing the movie Face Off, had her little moment where she's like, "Oh, your face is peeling.
And she just
Let me help you with that."
rips it off. Drax, his face came off, and you could just hear Rocket like, it's a mask. Like, it wasn't his real face. But oh my gosh, like that was some gruesome stuff. Like we went, my wife and I went and saw the movie. As of the time of this recording, our second viewing was last night, right? We went to a 5:15 show, and I saw a kid come in with her dad, and she looked maybe 12 years. I'm going to say 12 years old. I'm like, probably this kid's going to be okay throughout this movie. I'm sure this isn't their first Marvel movie or anything, but man, there was some stuff in this movie that was much heavier than anything we've seen before, including the look of High Evolutionary's face when Gamora rips his mask off. I was shocked that they did this. It's like, I don't know entirely with the ratings, but I'm like, I bet they were a couple times. I'm like, were they button up against like just on the edge of what you could get away with in PG-13? Because I feel like they were.
Yeah, I have a feeling that there's some point where it came back. You're gonna have to tone that down just a little bit.
And so after this, the High Evolution, he's defeated. He's left on the ship. We don't technically see him die. So if they want to bring him back, it's pretty easy to say, well, his powers kept him alive and he survived. But they get all the other, the implied lower life forms, if it will, basically the animals, and they rush them all on. Did you notice that one girl from nowhere got her face ripped up by a monkey? Like Mantis throws the monkey across the gap and it freaks out and just cuts this lady up. I kind of felt bad for her, I'm not going to lie. But they at this point, they're able to save everybody. Nobody's dead. Mission accomplished. They just got to get off of this thing. And Star-Lord drops the freaking Zune and goes back for it. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. When he went back for the Zune, I was like, again, I'm counting down the moment until someone dies, because I have it set in my mind someone is going to die. So now I'm like, oh damn, now is it Starlet? Is he done? Because I knew from reading articles that Chris Pratt is such a James Gunn guy that even when they were filming on Endgame, and that was, that was the Russo brothers, Chris Pratt was calling James Gunn like, would my character say this? Do you feel like this is right, or should I speak up on this? Like because he felt that there could not be a Star Lord without James Gunn. So I'm like, oh, okay. So if Gunn's leaving, then maybe Chris Pratt is Gunn. Maybe they're going to kill Star Lord. Like I was really concerned for him at that point.
Yeah, and we recently learned a little bit more about Gunn's involvement with Infinity War. Not that he was, there the whole time. We knew he had done some stuff like script passes and stuff on the Guardians dialogue. I want to say it was with Brandon Davis at Phase Zero, but there was an interview where he was basically asked, like, how hard was it to work in the death of Gamora after the Russos killed her? And Gunn said, like, he almost killed her in Guardians Volume 2. And ultimately he took the story a different way, but he had his ideas already for what he was going to do for the Guardians without their Gamora. And so it's like, oh, it really wasn't. He's like, so when the Russos called and basically asked Gunn for permission, can we do this? Can you work with us? He's like, oh yeah, I got ideas. We can do this. And I love that they were able to work that way together throughout this. So I love knowing it's like, yeah, Chris Pratt wanted to know, like, is this good for my character? Is this how to, and they already worked together on this other stuff, like the death of Gamora, which is obviously a huge, huge deal.
Yeah. So just watching Quill in that moment. So he goes back for the Zoom. Then he, with all the Star-Lord confidence, is like, that it's fine. I'm gonna grab the Zoom. I'll make the jump. I'll be okay. And then he doesn't make the jump. He shoots himself out, uses some gas from the ship to shoot himself out. Then a little bit of debris knocks him right back, and you see him trapped in the vacuum of space.
And I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, here, they're going to kill him. Like, because I genuinely believed that Drax, Rocket, and one other person were going to die. And at this point, nobody has died. And his face is like puffing up and is freezing over and everything. And it's kind of calling back to when Yondu died in the second one. It's even calling back to Guardians 1 when he saved Gamora with his mask. And ultimately, Adam Warlock saves him. Right, Adam Warlock brings him back. Groot had made a comment to him of everybody gets a second chance, because Groot had helped Adam Warlock earlier, and Adam Warlock saves him, and they're able to bring him back, and everybody's happy. And like, I noticed in the background, I didn't notice it the first viewing, I noticed in the second one, Gamora like stood up and like had this big like sigh of relief that Peter survived. So for all of her like toughness and gruff and like, I don't need you, I'm not your Gamora, there is a part of her that feels for him.
Yeah. And then I think I put in my notes, I called it the Sistine Chapel scene when Adam is going to save Peter and they're in the leaning pose and got the finger out.
Yes. Yeah.
And he saves them. They all come in. You get one big group hug, including Adam Warlock, just kind of like they're there. I guess this is what I'm supposed to do. And Gamora just kind of like rolls her eyes.
So everything's settled down. Everything's calm. Throughout the movie, Gamora has not been able to understand Groot. Like, she hasn't been around him. She doesn't know how he talks yet. She doesn't know his language. You're just making up what he's saying, right? Finally, she does start to understand him. Like, and she goes, oh, I enjoyed working with you too, right? And she realizes she understands. And I want to know if you see this scene the way that I do and the way I've heard a couple other people say that they do as well. The team is standing there together, and we'll get to what they're all individually going to do. But at one point, Groot looks at them all and says, he doesn't say, I am Groot. He says, I love you all. Do you think he was speaking English, or do you think he's still speaking like I am Groot, but that James Gunn was letting the audience hear what he was saying?
Well, considering I never took Groot on Asgard like Thor did, there's no way that I would be able to understand Groot. So I did feel like it was a peel back the curtain of we're letting you, the audience, we're letting everyone in on this moment.
That's kind of what I think was happening as well. So what is the Guardians going to do at this point? The High Evolutionary is defeated. All the kids are safe. All the animals are safe. What are they going to do? Well, Peter says, "I'm going back to Earth. I'm going to go find my grandpa and find out if he's still alive." Mantis had been telling him earlier, in like towards the beginning of the movie, he should be that he left. He abandoned his grandpa. He could have gone back after him. He's going to go find out if he's alive. Mantis wants to go off on her own. She says all she ever did was work for Ego, or work for the Guardian. She wants to see who she is. Drax offers to go with her, and she shoots him down. I love what Nebula says to Drax here.
Yeah.
Nebula
the
said,
show of respect.
yes, Nebula says, "I'm going to stay here and run the city. I can't leave the Guardians. I'm going to run the city and build the society that I never had." That alone is great, very honorable intentions. But she looks at Drax and says, "I need help with the kids." And I learned today, or I realized today, you weren't born to be a destroyer. You were born to be a dad. Like, is there any higher thing that she could have said, especially because her father is not exactly someone she's a big fan of? And so, like, for her to say that to him, I was like, that is such a show of respect. And I love that. Dave Bautista, I know, he's pretty much said he's done, right? Like, he's out, he's done. And he's been very clear about, like, he wished he had gotten more to do as the character than he has been given. It's one of the reasons why I thought he was going to bite it. I love that they gave him this ending, that he gets to be the dad and go off and take care of the kids. And if we never see him again, that's what he's doing, and that's fine. And hey, if he ever comes back, wonderful. It's an option. But if he truly doesn't, what a great finish for his character.
Yeah, and I also liked Peter and Gamora had a moment as she's going back to the Ravagers, and she's still like, "Hey, I'm not your Gamora," and you could tell Stroller's like, "All right, I'm gonna let you have that. I'm gonna let you walk away on that. I'm not gonna try and fight you on it." And she stops with their back to back, so she's not looking him right in the eye,
Mm-hmm.
and she just goes, "I bet we were fun."
Yeah. Yeah.
And just the look on his face of just being reinvigorated and a little bit of hope that maybe one day I will get my Gamora again. But just that line of, "I bet we were fun," right before she leaves was a very nice moment.
And like Batista, she had kind of been clear that she was pretty much been done as well. Like, she did her time, 3 movies plus Infinity War plus Endgame, and she goes back to the Ravagers, and the way they welcome her back and embrace her and hug her, like, they genuinely care for her. Like, she's clearly been with them for a while. We just didn't see it, and it's so great that, like, again, just like Drax, that her character is getting this wonderful send off. If they want to bring her back, if she wants to come back ever in the future, if they back up the Brinks truck to bring her back, fine, it's there. The character is alive, but if they don't, again, what a send off.
Yeah. And, you know, as everyone is taking their moments, we also learned that Rocket is now the new captain of the Guardians of the freaking Galaxy.
And I love the moment when they all do like the double chest tap thing that they took from the Ravagers to, like, it's basically the salute for their captain. And every one of the Guardians does it. Rocket is now the captain of the Guardians of the Galaxy. He's sitting on the stairs, and he gets the Zune from Peter. Peter left a note with him, says, "I went back for this for you." And it's one, you want to see Peter's reaction on Earth to, like, iPods now, like today, of like what it is, and like Spotify or Apple Music, right? Like Pandora, like, what's that? Where you have unlimited music basically. But he gives this to Zune to Rocket. Rocket goes to the 2000s and picks a song, Dog Days of Summer. And it's such a great song. It's a fun song. It's one I've always enjoyed. And I tell you, like, it's such, like, this beautiful, beautiful moment. And this scene, like the Dog Days of Summer scene, is now one of my favorite scenes for the non-action scenes in the MCU. I've just such an amazing moment when they did it. They won. They're past all the heartache. They're past all the trauma and the tragedy that they've gone through as a team, and they're able to just let loose. And you see Groot start dancing with some of the kids, and even Rocket starts dancing a little bit. But the one that really gets me every time I've seen it, is Drax, who in every single movie, I believe, has made a reference to not liking dancing, not wanting to do dancing, despises it. Drax, he's also a dad. He lets loose and starts dancing with all these kids. Absolutely, absolutely heart touching. Beautiful, beautiful scene.
Drax's dance gets me for two reasons. Number one, the fact that yeah, he said that he doesn't dance, all this other stuff. But right before that, he's watching Mantis wave goodbye, and he sheds the one thug tear to watch her as she leaves. Again, they've had this weird dynamic, the brother sister, the tease each other type dynamic, and now she's going off to do her thing. He sheds one tear for her, and then you see him just kind of sway and shift his mindset from okay, everything's going to be all right. Now I have to, as Nebula said, be the father figure for all these people, and he just lets loose, does the thing that all the kids are going to enjoy. He looks like he's having a great time doing this with all these kids and with Groot and with Rocket and everyone else who's dancing in the streets, and it's just it all is a perfect enclosure for his character.
It is, and with that, roll credits. We have the movie ended and they all lived. So I'm dead set that there's going to be these two specific deaths and possibly one more. And sure, we'll give them Lila. Like I will let Lila count, but no, like that she's not one of the Guardians, right? None of the Guardians died. I could not believe it. I'm absolutely floored at this decision, and I love it. I love the fact that they've all had their happy ending. Peter went off home. He went and visited his grandpa. They all have their happy ending, and any of them can come back if they ever want to in the future. None of them have to, and we know what they went off to do. Fantastic.
Yeah, it it left a door open for everyone, and it left a door open for everyone, but it didn't do it in a all right, we know they have to return type of way. It was just well, they're there. And just always remember they're there. We still have to finish this phase and we have another phase after that, but just know they're there.
So the mid credit scene is our new Guardians, right? Like they're getting ready to go into battle to save this civilization, and you've got Rocket and you've got Groot, who's basically now King Groot, right? Like he's even bigger than he used to be. You've got Kraglin, you've got Adam Warlock, and the name that I was like, did they say what I think they just said? And yep, it's been confirmed. That's what they said. Phyla. Like the main girl that you saw the most talking to all the adults who kept saying Jube Jube, which means friend. She's Phyla. She's Phyla Vel, who is basically kind of character connected to the High Evolutionary in the comics. She's been connected to Captain Marvel. She went by Quasar for a while, not the original Quasar, but a different one. She's had a couple different names. It's like, oh, they're bringing in another cosmic badass. That's cool.
Yeah, she played a huge role in. I shouldn't say huge. She played a strong role in the Annihilation storyline, which
Yes.
also heavily featured Drax. So she has ties to the Guardians and things like that. So to bring her in again, if they ever want to bring them back, hey, we've got your heart, we've got your heavy, we've got all these different members of the
Mhm.
team in this new incarnation.
Yeah, and that Annihilation event, which is absolutely phenomenal, basically led into what became the Guardians cast in the comics that would become the movie cast. So yeah, it's a pretty important one. It's great that they introduced her. Let's save the actual post credit scene for our own post credit scene. We'll save that one there. I want to touch on there. So with that aside, last thoughts about the movie. Where would you rate it out of 10? Where does it stand for you in the MCU? What are you thinking?
So right now, I looked at my rankings right now, and I keep flipping it between 6 and 7, uh, in my number ordered. I had the original Guardians of the Galaxy at 7, and I definitely put it above that. Um, so right now, I'd have to look at Letterbox to make sure, but I believe it is battling Captain America Civil War right now for its placement.
Okay, I respect that. Well, what do you have for a rating out of 10?
Rating out of 10, I would put it at a solid 8.5.
Okay.
Like I said, that there were a lot of great moments and there were a lot of culminating moments. I mean, it's very hard for me to give a movie a straight up 10 out of 10 unless it's just the ultimate form of badassery. But I heard a lot of people saying going into this that, hey, this is the best one since Endgame. Agree. Um, as far as the MCU proper, yeah, it is in the upper echelon of the MCU. Its rewatchability for me and its story beats for me and its heartbeats for me are, you know, above compared to a lot of the movies, especially a lot of the recent movies. Like, you can really tell that they put some love and some time into this. So yeah, I'd give it solid 8.5, 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and go with a 9 as well. No, not a perfect movie, there's definitely some nits I could pick if you really want, but ultimately, what a fantastic finish to the James Gunn trilogy of movies and whatever you would call it, with the holiday special mixed in there. Just, I'm so glad that after he was fired and then originally was able to come back, like it was worth the wait. Like, when they rehired him, we knew at that point we had to wait for Suicide Squad, and yeah, we had to wait for Suicide Squad and then Peacemaker, and then he did this, and it was worth the wait. I'm so glad that it happened. I've been mulling over my rankings, and I've been like struggling between anywhere from spaces like 7 through 10, basically, or 6 or 10, like in that ballpark. Where I've settled on is number 7, right in front of Guardians, the first Guardians. This might be one of those scenarios where I think it's the better movie, but the other one might be more of like my favorite Guardians movie. But regardless, such an incredible victory, such an incredible achievement that James Gunn and Marvel Studios have put together here. I could not be happier with the way that this movie ended. And again, I'm just so glad they all got a happy ending like that. That's like, I don't know how I would have felt about that if I had had it spoiled for me. Like, oh, I feel like someone should have, but no, like, I am a big believer that, like, you don't need a main character to die for it to consider to have stakes. None of our major characters died, and I think there were lots of stakes in this movie, and I think they did a phenomenal job.
Yeah. Um, I did hear one criticism that I did not agree with, and someone referred to Lila's death as basically fridging a character. And I'm like, just because she was the female counterpart, I don't agree with the fridging analogy. And
I
as a
don't think
huge,
it was done to motivate him.
yeah,
Like, he was
um,
already motivated to save them and get them out. I disagree with that one.
and the fact that the direction of where the High Evolutionary was going, like, these characters were destined for death. Like, you had to have everyone around Rocket, you know, go away in order for him to continue on his path, which led him to the Guardians itself. So I did not I don't buy into that thought process that, oh, just because she was the not so love interest, that, oh, it's fridging a character. Like, no, that's just that Rocket would have been fighting to get out of there anyway. Rocket would have been pissed at the High Evolutionary anyway. Like, all these things would have happened. It's just this death was just another emotional story beat, and one that fit. It wasn't just a death for death's sake, or we just had to kill somebody in order to motivate. It all fit in the context of the story.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, I mean, fridging is a serious issue. Like, it really happens. Like, it's a cheat, it's a cop out, and it's not one that they did here. I don't think that at all. I definitely would push back on that. With that, let's go ahead and start to wrap it up before we do our credit scene. Again, thanks to Organic Price Books, our official sponsor. Use the code MarvelGUA at checkout to save $2. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Marvel A Podcast. I'm at Brentech Prime. Chris will be back next week. We'll get his thoughts on the movie. He's at Chris Balga. Please do not message him in anything. He has not seen the movie yet. You can email the show at marvelalliancepodcast@gmail.com. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance at GUA Podcast Network. David, where can people find you?
I am on every social with at the Phantom. That is my handle and everything. So you can find me there. I'm the most active on Twitter right now, as long as it's still around. But that is where you will find me, just geeking out on all forms of nerddom, whether it be Marvel, DC, Star Wars, wrestling, or anything in between. You geek it, I do it.
I like it. All right. Well, again, David, thank you for filling in tonight in Chris's absence. And listeners, thanks to you as well. So with that, Excelsior. All right. Post credits. What are we going to talk about? Oh, we're going to talk about the credit scene itself, the post credit scene from the movie in question. Basically, it's just Peter having breakfast with his grandpa, talking about having to mow the lawn of, I'm assuming, his grandfather's wife. That's my assumption, and wondering why her kid isn't doing it. You know, he's 45, he's able-bodied. Why isn't her kid doing it? It's a funny gag on the newspaper about Kevin Bacon and his alien abduction. That's a holiday special call out. The thing that caught me the absolute most by surprise, the legendary Star-Lord will return. David, when are we going to see the legendary Star-Lord again?
You know, the first time I saw that, I was like, how? I thought he was done. But then I started thinking, like, man, are they going to bring him back for the King Saga? I think with a character like that, you probably have to wait for one of the bigger movies. And so I feel like you're not going to see him until the culmination of the next thing. So at the end of phase 5 is when you're going to see him. But I also wonder, since this is happening during the King Dynasty, is it going to be Chris Pratt Star-Lord that we see?
Oh, interesting. I had not thought of that. I feel like it is, or I don't think they would have said the legend. I feel like the way they did that, they're telling you he will be back. I was a little surprised at that because like I've seen those comments of like how loyal he is to James Gunn, and I'm sure he talked to James Gunn about that. But the one place I can think of him popping up prior to Secret Wars, prior to King Dynasty, to the Avengers stuff, is like I don't, yes, he's on Earth right now, but I don't see him showing up in Thunderbolts. I don't see him showing up in Cap New World Order. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see it right now, right? But you know, there is a rumored a Nova project in development, and Nova and Star-Lord, like in the comics, they're frequent buddies, frequent team up, especially around Annihilation. Maybe something there. I would certainly dig it if that was the case. I'm a huge Nova fan, so that's my one idea for where he might show up.
I've been waiting on a Nova movie for a while.
Oh yeah,
they are my Marvel Green Lanterns, so
oh yeah, for sure.
I have been waiting on that. So yeah, if we get an appearance by Richard Rider, then yes, please give me an interaction between him and Star-Lord. And up until this movie, for the longest time, even though he is, I shouldn't say getting up there in age, because in my mind he's not that old, but for lead action wise, before this, I had seen in my mind Nathan Fillion as Richard Rider. Like I had cast that in my mind, but now they had given him this other role, but to have those two just play off each other would have been just gold for me.
They could do an older Richard Rider if they're bringing in Sam Alexander at the same time.
True.
Maybe. I don't know. But regardless, that's the best I've come up with. So again, listeners, thank you so much for listening, and we will be back next week.